Hello and welcome to the lecture on pseudo classes and elements. So let's understand how to write pseudo classes and elements. Okay, let's create a file. We'll call it as pseudo class. Then we'll look at pseudo elements. Okay, we'll use a boilerplate. So we'll go to type selector, copy this. So we'll go to selector, copy this as a boilerplate, and then we'll go to our pseudo classes. We paste it here. Okay, then we'll call it as pseudo selector CSS. Okay, this is a class, pseudo class. We'll see what a pseudo class means and how to write it. Okay, so how to write pseudo classes. Okay, for some of the selectors you have something called as pseudo classes, which you can define it via colon, and then you can mention the pseudo class. You can define the class or basically the attribute for that specific selector. Okay, let's take an example of anchor tag. Okay, anchor tag have pseudo classes, like it has link. Okay, and also it has visited. If someone has clicked that link, what action you want to show on that link, means you want to change the property of that attribute. Hover and then active. Okay, so let's write this conditions here. For the link, I want the color to be blue, right? Someone visited, I want the color to be gray, means it's showing that you have already visited this link. Someone go on the link, hover means when you mouse over the link you make it red, and active means green. Okay, so let's write our anchor tags here. So we'll define 3 links. We'll say hash, so we can say home page. We can actually give different links so that we know whether it's visited or not. Okay, and then 3 contact in the about page. Okay, so we have 3 links with the different hrefs, and you will see the pseudo classes is been applied onto anchor tags depending on the action that has been happening on that tag. So if I refresh this page, let's close this, open up the new live editor. Right, so everything is in blue in color, right? You see when you hover on it, it becomes red in color. That's basically coming up from this. Okay, it's red in color when you hover on it. That's called hovering, right? So when you click something, right, when you visited that page, it becomes gray. So let's click this. Right, now this link has become gray because of this property. You have visited that, so that's why it become the gray. You can click on contact, you can click on the home page. Okay, so what is active? When you click and hold, you can see it's active, right? Click and hold, it's active. Click and hold, it's active, it's green. Where here are some of the pseudo classes. So some of the tags will have pseudo classes wherein you can play around of its attribute, how you want to define it, and you can change the property of it when you basically write some condition in the CSS. Like one good example is a hovering. When you hover on this link, you want to change the color. Maybe when you hover on an image, you want to change the image. Those kind of things can be done via the pseudo classes. Okay, so let's look at pseudo elements. So for this, I'll create one more file. And I'll call it pseudo elements. Okay, let's open this file. Okay, the pseudo elements is defined with double colon. Okay, let's define some pseudo element. I'll define a pseudo element for h1 and I'll say after this tag what you want to do. After this tag I want to add a content of, let's say I want to add like this, right? So after every h1 tag you will see these symbols, whatever symbol you can add like this, or you want to add dashes or whatever symbol that you add it here will be available. So this content is available after the h1 tag. Okay, so we have an h1 tag here, and if you see the h1 tag, so you see the exclamatory mark is basically coming after the heading. So even though text is not there, you are adding that content via the pseudo elements. Okay, this is how you define a pseudo element, and then you can do whatever conditions or rules you want to apply onto that element. Another good example is for paragraph. For the p tag, the first letter, right, you want to increase the size, so you will say font size of 200%, and let's say you write a p. This is a text which has first letter bigger, right? And you go ahead over here, see the first letter is 200%. You can increase to 500%. Okay, you can see you can play around with your text as well with something called a pseudo element. Pseudo elements work before and after most of the times, and you can change the behavior of the text using this pseudo elements as well. Okay, how you define it? You define it with double colon. Pseudo classes with colon and pseudo elements with double colon. Okay, so that's all about pseudo classes and elements, and I'll see you in the next one.